Thinking about buying real estate in the Villages, thinking about buying real estate in Florida, there's really two things more. Really, there's probably about 25 things that you need to be concerned with, but I feel like week by week, I'm trying to dissect it and kind of simplify it, come up with two things to really look at each time that I speak to you guys on YouTube. So, two other things to really look at and be concerned with. Number one is title. So we're going to talk a little bit about title, and we're going to talk about inspections, right? Like that whole thing. And I think more than ever, I think it's really crucial that from the buying standpoint and even the selling standpoint, we're in such a different marketplace where we have to have different expectations. And I think about this, I've had conversations with people around the country about, restaurant service. And, restaurant service in a lot of places is not what it was last year or even the year before. 2019 and 2021, the restaurant services, I'm noticing it's not as good. Well, why? Because there are more people going to restaurants, especially here in Florida. Things have opened up, and around the country, you're going to start seeing that more and more. But also, because of the programs that are in place, restaurants are having a hard time finding enough service help. So they've got less people serving. So in other words, in many cases, not every case, in many cases, we're seeing less service. So it's not as good until they end that, and I think that's going to be in the next couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of restaurant owners that I talk to are saying, okay, it's going to improve in a couple of weeks. But for now, service is not as good in restaurants. I bring that up because of the times, because of the dynamics of what's going on, service has been affected, but also when we're talking about title, when we're talking about property inspection, home inspection, there are certain things that we need to understand where service can be affected. So the first thing to look at when you're talking about title is there was a time where you can close, actually the time was last year, and before, where you can close within a week, 7 to 10 days. If you had cash, you can close pretty quickly if the seller was willing and able to move and able to close. And if the buyer was willing and able to close, that was a doable thing. Now, not so much because the title companies are swamped. Some title companies are turning away business. One company that we deal with a couple of companies, but one company that we deal with, Oxford Title, has said they're not going to turn down business. They're just going to work their tails off to make it happen. So kudos and shout out to Oxford Title. But, that's a thing. You have to be aware that you may want to close quickly, but it may not be able to happen. Look, by the way, that's another thing. I wasn't going to bring it up, but mortgage as well, like refis and some other things in the past. Mortgage companies, banks have been able to close quickly, 3 to 4 weeks. Now it's more 30 to 45 days plus. So it's a consideration. So be mindful of that. It's not only the buyer and seller that's involved. Obviously, we've got a title company and sometimes a mortgage company involved if we're not using cash. The other thing I want you to look at is obviously home inspection. So one thing we always recommend is connecting. We try to give people an option, give buyers an option. Here's 2 or 3 different options. It's not our home inspector that we use. It's a home inspector you feel comfortable with, that you vet as a buyer, and you're sure that they're going to do, maybe with a recommendation, maybe look at reviews, look at Google reviews. I think that's obviously smart to see who else has used this particular person, and are they recommended or recommendable? What's their track record, that type of thing. Anybody can have a bad review. Sometimes, look, you're not going to be perfect. There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to give you a bad review, but are most of their reviews, a thumbs up? So look at that. But also be mindful that in the contract, in the FAR bar or as is contract, you still have the right to inspect. Typically it's 15 days to decide what you're going to have the seller repair, and in Florida anyway. And that being the case, and that's a negotiable item. You can change that, by the way. That can be negotiated, either more days or less days. And in this case, when we're talking about inspectors, they're also swamped. Remember, I did obviously you're watching some of my other YouTube videos, that there's been a significant increase in sales, 60+ % increase in sales, that means that home inspectors are swamped as well as title companies. So being mindful that you're going to want to vet and order your home inspections a little bit quicker than normal. Make sure there's enough time allowed between the time that you're going to order the inspection and the time that your inspector is going to arrive at the house, and give you a detailed report so you know that you're not buying a lemon. That's super important. And make sure you've got enough time before the end of your due diligence period to decide whether to either get out of the contract, or depending on the contract you've got, or the list of items that you're going to have the seller repair or replace. We'll probably do more videos on this, a little bit more discussion in the near future on inspections and home inspection repairs and cosmetic and what's not cosmetic. But be mindful of timelines is my point of this video. And just know that title companies and realtors, everybody is doing more than what they're used to doing. So timelines are super crucial right now. Any questions that you have, just give me a call, 352-572-3796, 352-572-3796. Take care.